use your non-dominant hand to write for the other person, because you're going to get into some intuitive parts of your brain that are going to allow you to get some really true and deep insights into where the other person is really coming from. It's not that you're reading their mind, because it has nothing to do with their mind or their ego or their intelligence or their left brain. It has to do with their soul. What's really going on inside at a very deep level. And when you see that and you see people's vulnerability, then you get off your high horse about how they're creating a problem in your life. They've got a problem of their own, and you don't have to be part of that. You can just witness it and be aware of what's stopping them from being an open and connecting person. So it really does wonders.
And a quick question. So are you saying that during our interactions with people, our soul or our spirit or whatever is recognizing these intuitions about what's going on with other people?
That's right.
And then by using this method in our non-dominant hand, we're able to connect with what we witnessed, but weren't able to verbalize to ourselves.
That's right. Because our ego gets in the way.
Yeah.
Now, as a psychologist, I know, theoretically, when somebody's acting really belligerent, there's a tremendous amount of insecurity underneath. I know that intellectually. But that doesn't mean that I really experience it when I'm in a conflict with somebody. My ego might come in and create a wedge. And their ego's in there too. So I'm not getting through to the real person. And I'm not getting through their real feelings. And so if I can get through their vulnerability, it really changes it for me, because I'm seeing them through different lenses now. I'm not seeing the belligerence anymore. I'm not seeing the defenses. I'm seeing the fear in the back, the anxiety, whatever the wounding is. And it's like, how can I be angry at that? Really? Somebody who's afraid of judgment. And that's their own judgment. They're judging themselves, so they're projecting it onto me. And so I don't want to get in that role of judging them and being that projection that they're putting out. I just want to get to the heart of the matter. And so this dialogue form allows that. In a school district in Southern California in 1981-82. And we had a teacher in there who was really difficult. She would sit in the staff training meetings and she would act like a teenager. She would giggle and sit in the back of the room and distract other people and just really be a nuisance. Or she'd come in late or go out and come back. And I was not an employee of the district, I was a consultant. And I was getting pretty irritated with her. And the other staff members on my team, the arts coordinators and educators, were getting really irritated with her as well in their workshops. So they started complaining to me, and I was like, what are we going to do now? So around the winter break, when we were out of school for a couple of weeks, I decided to go home and do some journaling about it before I talked to any of the administrators in the school. And because I was ready to go to the project coordinator and just say, do something with this chick. You know, I'm sick of her. So I went home and did my journal work, and I dialogued with her. And what I saw on her face, in my mind, was fear. And when I told her how I felt about her, and then I let her talk with my non-dominant hand, she said she was afraid that we were asking her to teach a method that she'd never done before. She wasn't really sure how to do it. She was afraid she was going to look stupid, make mistakes, and do a bad job. And that was a totally different face than the one I'd ever seen on her, because she'd always acted kind of belligerent, very closed off, and really irritable. She always acted irritable. So I really got some insight into her at that point. I said, oh, that's what's underneath all this stuff. So when I went back, right after the holidays, the next morning I went to her school, and my job was to observe these different classrooms in these 2 pilot schools. And she had never allowed us to visit her classroom. It was voluntary. And she never invited us in. Well, I pulled up my car by the building. She comes running out of the building before I even got in there. She had an aide in the classroom with the kids. And she says, would you come into my classroom? We're doing journaling. Would you like to see us do journaling? Okay. I was shocked. So I went in and sat down in the corner, and I watched these kids, and a lot of these children were Cambodian boat children. They come across in boats. Their villages had been burned down. They were all suffering from PTSD. There were a lot of Hispanic children who lived in extremely poor households. They had come to this country under very difficult circumstances. And so these kids had a lot of challenges. And then they shared. I saw them doing their journaling, and they shared. And some of the kids from Cambodia showed pictures of their villages being burned down with the flames coming out of the houses and all that stuff. And it just got me. I was like, wow, this is really incredible work. And so when they were through, recess time comes, and I said, can I talk to you during recess? She said, yeah, I'll have the aide go out with the kids. And I said, this is amazing work. I mean, I'm just really moved by what's going on here and the kind of sharing these kids are doing and the atmosphere of safety you've created for them. And she said, well, you know, over the holidays I went home and visited my mom, and I went back to my room at our family home, and I found my old journals. And I realized that my journals saved me in high school. And she went to a high school, it was right near where I was living at the time, in Pacific Palisades. And I said, really? She says, yeah, she said, it really was very important for me. It really saved me in high school. And so she had been quietly doing this great work, but she was putting on this defense because she was afraid she was going to be judged, and I certainly did not judge her. In fact, I said to her, this is the best journal work I've seen with kids. Would it be okay with you, and would you talk it over with the kids, if we allowed people from the county schools who have to come out and visit, because this is a federally funded program, if they could visit your classroom? And she said, oh yeah, that's fine, we can do that. I was shocked. So I turned that whole thing around by doing this journaling and getting an insight into her that her ego was getting in the way of. I could not have gotten to that part of her, that vulnerability and that fear, if I hadn't done that journal dialogue. And that completely turned everything around. And she was the only teacher that was really giving us any trouble, and that ended right there. We sailed through the end of the year, we had a great year, and we raised reading and math scores as much as 20% up points in 1 year in that school, in both pilot schools, K through 6. So I was very amazed at the power of this particular technique, to get insights into other people and to be able to heal a rift or some kind of misunderstanding or problem with another person. I want to share a very dramatic case. One of our graduates of our Creative Journal Expressive Arts Training Program is a young Jewish Orthodox girl in Muncie, New York. And her name is Hoodie. And she had to do a case study while she was in training a couple of years ago. She called me up during her year of training, and she said, well, these people have asked me to work with their daughter. She's 11 years old, and when she was 2, she was given an immunization shot, and she turned into a vegetable. She lost motor control. She's never spoken since then. She was perfectly normal up to that point. And they have taken her to doctors and all kinds of practitioners, and nothing's really worked. She's very emotional. She acts out. It's sort of a Helen Keller story of a child trapped in a body, but with all these emotions inside, didn't know what to do with them, and didn't have the motor control to function normally. And pretty difficult on the whole family, large family. And she said, do you think I dare work with her? I said, sure. You're very intuitive, and you've got a lot of heart, and go for it. So she did. She went to work with the girl, and she took her journal with her. And it came to her that maybe she could get inside this girl's experience and feelings by doing non-dominant hand dialogue work. So she didn't actually do it as a dialogue. She just went to the session with the girl and sat there and started writing with her non-dominant hand with the intention of that girl coming through her hand. And the first words that came out were, if you think this is you writing this, this will never work. And she just like froze, whoa. And when she called me that night to tell me what had happened and that she'd continued writing and she'd gotten all this girl's internal feelings out on paper, I feel so frustrated, I know it's difficult for my family, I don't know how to control my feelings, I can't control my body, basically that. She was just blown away, and I said, this is amazing. So yeah, you tapped into her. You're probably the first person who's ever really understood her. This is a Helen Keller story. You know, this is like Annie Sullivan with this child who suddenly has somebody to communicate to in a different language. Because she read what she wrote to this girl. And the girl acknowledged in her own way, yeah, that's it, that's right. And I said, what were you thinking before you wrote for the first time for this girl? And she said, I was thinking exactly what that said. I was thinking, oh, this is probably just me making it up. And everybody says that about writing with a non-dominant. Oh, I'm just making this up. You get these pearls of, oh, I must have just made that up. The left brain does not like this work. It's very weird. It's very different. And so the left brain's going to come out, you're just making that up. That's not really, you know, your low back didn't say that. No, that girl didn't say that. But that girl did say that. And so, of course, her own thought form was coming out. The girl was picking it up, and that's what came out on the paper. Yeah. If you think this is you writing this is not you, Hoodie. This is me talking. That's what this girl's trying to say. And meanwhile, they've been working together. That was her case study. She has been able to go to weddings. She had her bar mitzvah. She's not speaking with a vocabulary, but she speaks some words. And her first word was hoodie. Oh. That night of the first session, the mother called Hoodie and said, guess what? She just said her first word. What was it? Your name, Hoodie. Please come back and work with her some more. So she's been working with her for a couple of years. And I'm working with one of the sisters in that family. And she says, you have no idea how this has changed our family life. She said, we couldn't take her anywhere. You know, we couldn't have her at family gatherings, and she was just totally out of control. And now she went to a wedding, she was all dressed up. One of my other students in that community called me and said, you're not going to believe it. You know, I saw this girl at the wedding, she was all dressed up, she was dancing with people, she was delightful. And I couldn't believe it was the same girl that was in that case study. So we have just tapped into a possible application of this work that I had never really dreamed of before, and that is working with people who are handicapped and disabled, developmentally disabled, who for whatever reason cannot speak. And I really am looking forward to doing more exploration of that. But she's our first case of that phenomenon. And I knew that this worked in relationships because I've had hundreds of people write me letters and read the books and do this in problematic relationships and heal these relationships. But working with somebody who has not been able to communicate in a normal way has not been anything that we really thought about before. But now it's definitely in the game. So that's an exercise you can do on your own. If you have a problem with somebody in your life, just do a dialogue with them.